our starting time. One more panel member will be arriving in a couple of minutes, we hope, but we will get started anyway. This is a meeting of the Urban Design Peer Review Panel. Today is July 18th. We have a couple of projects to review. The first is American Tower. The second is Magnolia Hotel. We are starting with American Tower, but before that, we need to approve the minutes of our last meeting that happened on May 16th. Do I have a motion to approve minutes? Second, thank you, Norman. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Very good. Great. Minutes have been approved. Okay. With that, I want to, before your turn, I want to address the project team. You probably all know this is a panel made up of a whole team. We are engineers, historic preservation experts, planners, landscape architects, architects, and our goal is to facilitate a better city block by block, project by project. So we advise the planning department and the city manager on best practices on urban design, and that's what we try to do. Many of your fellow developers, designers, architects, they have been here more than once. They seek our advice after the first time that they can share their work with us. They come back for more. They realize that the project many times is enhanced after a review like this. So that's our goal, to facilitate the design and development process and enhance whenever possible what's being presented to us. Okay, wanted to make that, to share that with you. With that, Ray, would you introduce the project for us?
Absolutely, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, welcome back, everyone. After a month off, we've got two adaptive reuse projects downtown. The first one, as Eureka mentioned, is this American Bank Tower. It currently operates as an office building, but it is planning to undergo a transformation to become a mixed-use property. The vision for the building is to retain over 500,000 rentable square feet of office space while introducing 242 hotel keys, 240 residential units, and over 10,000 square feet of ground floor retail. Additional improvements include constructing an above-grade parking garage to serve as a functional podium for residential and hotel amenities, including a jewel box banquet hall. Streetscape improvements are planned to create a more walkable, shaded, and inviting environment around the property. And with that, I'll hand it off to Ramsey March, the development team.
Thank you, Greg. My name is Ramsey March. I lead development at Stream Realty Partners. We're headquartered here in Dallas. We are partners with Slate Asset Management, Brendan Shanahan, as well as I'm going to go around the horn briefly and make you aware of our consultant team that's here. My job, along with Brendan, is going to be to orient you on the project, tell you exactly what we're looking to accomplish with the design. I think I did the math. We have one consultant per 1 million square feet of building here represented with us today. So it has been quite a methodical process, and we've resourced over the past 12 or 13 months around getting to a really excellent solution. But we thank you for your time today and your willingness to help us make a better project along the way. So before we dive into the project, I'll briefly go around there and make sure you know who's here. And we have civil and architecture. We'll start with Kimley Horn.
Yeah, Scott Johnson, Kimley Horn, traffic engineer. Alex Brathman, Kimley Horn, site civil.
Blake Bell, Stream Realty Design and Construction.
Jenkins Vendor, Stream Realty.
David Bellamar, Slate Asset Management.
Brad Warnack, Realty.
Ken Mendenhall with the studio outside and landscape architect.
Megan Reynolds with HKS.
And Scott HKS.
Rick Myers with HKS.
And Brendan Chandler, Slate Asset Management. As Ramsey said, we really appreciate your time and getting your feedback. I think we just, Slate's been involved with this project since 2018 in one form or another. And over the last year, partnered with Stream to really, how we look at transformational developments within our organization, which is international development and opportunistic, real estate platform, is taking a really methodical approach to finding the right solution so that a real estate project can be successful. And I think as you can see with all of our consultants, we really spent the last year plus evaluating this tower, evaluating what its highest and best use can be, and evaluate how it can contribute to the city of Dallas, both at the streetscape level and in a broader economic sense. So today, I think Ramsey and I are going to run through a little bit of this design package that you have in front of you and explain what our vision is for the tower.
So first, let's start with what Comerica Bank Tower is. It's an icon on the Dallas skyline. Originally designed by Philip Johnson. Of course, you all know who he is. His greatest work in Dallas. Just shy of 1.6 million square feet, 60 stories in height. It truly, we believe, is the most beautiful office asset in all of Dallas, both inside and out. But then let's go to the challenges that we faced as we looked at the reality of the situation with the building. So the building is currently about 50% occupied by tenants, including, of course, Comerica Bank as the anchor tenant. So you have about 800,000 square feet of tenants in a 1.6 million square foot tower. The second challenge, obviously that's a financial challenge. And then we have the potential that the building is going to be as low as 15 or 20% leased. If we do nothing, we don't intervene in the next 5 years, unfortunately, we foresee a scenario where the occupancy dips that low. And then what do? We've got a great asset and a great location that's important to the city. And then the second challenge is this building was built as a fortress quite intentionally. It was built for Momentum Bank. Originally, it was named Momentum Place in 1987 when it was constructed. And actually, when Phil Johnson and their team came in and they conceived of the design, the street, particularly on Irbe, where now resides a banking hall that's very foreboding. I think the original design intent was to bring more activity to the street, and Momentum Bank said, no, we don't want an office building, we want a bank building. And many of us lived through that period of time. That was just the mentality of the day. We at Stream actually have experience with that mentality. We redeveloped successfully Trammell Crow Center on Ross Avenue, and Rick Keating, a great architect, and Trammell Crow Company, great developer. That building was intentionally built the same way. They kind of said, stay out, don't come in. And so what we did there is we sort of turned the building inside out, brought retail to Ross Avenue on both sides of the street. We intervened by bringing parking to the building, which it desperately needed. And we believe a similar formula will work extremely well here. So there's the fortress quality of the building. And then there's another reality, which is parking, which does have to serve a new use in multifamily in the building. And then parking has long been one of the Achilles heels of this building. There's only 700 parking spaces underneath the building to serve 1.6 million square feet. Tenants in downtown even demand more parking than that. We'll get into the parking solution here in a moment that will sort of reveal to you how we're right-sizing the office space and then delivering the parking ratio to those tenants in the net of the project that will make this project very successful. So with that, I will contextualize the location and bring the jump in to see that. But who has been in Comerica Bank Tower recently or ever? I guess you can admit this. You're not alone. So Comerica Bank Tower is really in the heart of the Main Street district, across from the MERT, which is one of the original adaptive reuse projects of downtown that was successful in catalyzing things like the park system that DDI or Friends of DDI have been critical in rolling out. And as you can see on the map, first and foremost, we're really in the middle of the green space activity that's happening downtown. Obviously, Main Street Garden Park is county corner to our site. Pacific Plaza, New Park is just 1 block away. And then Civic Garden, Harwood Park, and Newer Park as well. So all within a very short walk. And then we've also indicated here the bike paths and the light rail coming through downtown. So really, truly right in the heart of downtown. And this is without calling out Neiman Marcus, which is directly across the street from this site. We're obviously keenly aware of what's going on with them and excited to see what the future of Neiman Marcus holds for the future. So that's where we are. It's an important location for downtown Dallas, obviously. This is a stacking diagram, and all the boards in here are in your package. We've pulled out 10 of them, and then we'll get to this landscape and some other things that are in the package.
Could you, as you show us the boards, could you please put
Sure.
the boards over there, so they are not any against the wall?
Oh, thanks.
So they are all on display.
So this is a very simple stacking diagram of the reprogramming of the tenant. So the top, roughly 14 floors or 16 floors, from floors 44 to 60 will convert to 240 apartments, rental apartments. We've committed to 10% affordability on those, and then we're not here to talk about that today, but the apartments will go to the top floors. We're excited about that because they will be at the highest, most prominent views for any apartments in downtown Dallas, with all respect to Fountain Place. The office then will reside in the mid to upper floors of the tower. So this is important because in downtown Dallas, you want this to be successful, and want American Bank to be a part of the project going forward. To be successful downtown, you need to make sure that your blocks of space don't reside at the lowest floor of the building. So that's happening from floors 19 through 43. And then we'll total just shy of 600,000 square feet. So we are taking about 1 million square feet out of the building and reprogramming it for other uses. And then the hotel floors will be floors 9 through 18, 242 keys. We are close to a term sheet with a very prominent luxury category hotel for the hotel. Very excited about it. I think you'll see here in a moment why the program that we've conceived works very well for a hotel, particularly as it relates to the podium for the ballroom and amenity space. And then the lower floors, and you'll understand how this works in a moment. The lowest floors are designated for amenities that serve the office, the residential, and the hotel functions. And those abut the new podium structure that we'll talk about here in a moment. And then below grade, just indicated there is the 700 parking spaces that exist, and those will remain, and those will exclusively serve the office use.
When you think about the stacking plan, a lot of what went into this is really the engineering of the building and the efficiency of it, so that we can create the right experience for each use, so that each use can be successful on its own and have its own experience, which we're going to run through a little bit.
So actually, before we do this, let's go ahead and head into this. So this is the site plan. Of course, everybody knows how to read that, and this room knows how to what they're looking at. So the largest intervention that we're making in this project is that I referenced Herb Bay. So if you've seen the building, I think there's a before and after depiction there. Right across from Neiman Marcus, there's steps leading up to what's currently a banking hall that has very few windows. It really, doesn't serve as an effective entrance to anything. Most of the activity happens coming in and out of the building on Elm Street and Main Street, and then over on St. Paul. Those will continue to be active and important entrances into the building. But the most significant intervention as part of this project is that the banking hall will go away and it'll be replaced by a podium that serves several purposes. The first is to really engage and activate the ground plane on Herb Bay, which has never really been done before. So on this side of the plan, you can see it's really a super block down by the streets I mentioned before. This is the party line that happens between the office tower and what's currently a banking hall. Much of this is plaza setback, where you see retail depicted in blue currently today. So what's important about this is that we looked at this site and said, about a third of this super block is pretty useless. And we could do a lot better in terms of using that portion of the site to unlock the potential for redevelopment on this property. So the banking hall goes away and then comes back. It will show you renderings, comes back to podium that serves the parking, of course. We're treating it, skinning it on all three sides in a very significant way. And then we're bringing back just shy of 11,000 square feet of retail along Herb Bay. And that's important for a variety of reasons. One, because we know that an active street does best when there's activity on both sides of the street. We saw that on Ross Avenue when we had a parking lot across from Trammell Pro Center. Nobody really wanted to walk down Ross Avenue right there. Then all of a sudden, when you have activity on both sides of the street, it makes both sides work well. So we're adding retail here across from retail on the other side of Burbank, and then Neiman Marcus, if you will, down here as well. So we're very excited about the potential for that. The other significance of the podium is that we're introducing a paseo that will connect Main Street to Elm. That serves a variety of purposes. First, we're going to dress it up. You see some depictions of the design direction for the paseo so that it's friendly for pedestrian activity. It'll be actually, it has a grade change that will calm the traffic to the extent it comes through. But really, its main purpose is to bring vehicles off the street, particularly for our hotel, both guests and those coming to in and out of events. It actually has clearance that will accommodate a tour bus. So you won't have tour buses parking on Elm Street or on St. Paul queuing up as events are happening. I know there are other properties where that's been a concern, where you think you have a lane of traffic, but then all of a sudden you've got backup happening, and really that traffic, that lane of traffic is effectively gone.
It also impacts the pedestrian experience at other assets downtown where that happens. And so really what we've focused on is how you bring vehicles off the sidewalk, off the street, so that you don't impact the pedestrian experience around the entire site, and offer also that width and ability to cross through the specific architectural facades as well.
So the pedestrian is critically important in this plan, and we'll talk about, obviously we have Kent here to talk about some things we're doing to make the sidewalk interesting and to manage any conflicts between pedestrian and vehicle along the way. But now we'll orient you on what's happening underneath the tower itself. So what's really important about this building is that it has a massive ground floor footprint that really helps split the uses on the ground floor so that hotel, office, and residential uses really don't have to overlap. That's really important for the long-term success of the building. An office tenant wants to have access to the hotel, but they don't want hotel guests walking through their lobby. They also don't want residents walking their dog to the lobby as well. So what you can see here is that we've designated Main Street in yellow as the lobby for the office going forward. Elm Street for the residential on the top of the plan in red. And then in orange, we have our hotel arrival, so a 3-meal restaurant. There's currently a restaurant there called the Wicked Butcher. We would expand and enhance that restaurant position, and then introduce a drive port. So currently there's a little grove of trees, a plaza really, that's been completely underutilized since the construction of this building. And it really, we're fortunate to have that because it creates a 2-lane arrival sequence for vehicles into and out of the hotel. We've been working already with city staff pretty extensively for how this works as it relates to one-way Elm Street going this direction. And then we're also introducing a lay-by in a lane that's currently dominated by metered parking. We've been working a lot with Gus and staff on this, and we actually have some sections to show you how that will work in our plan. We've already gone down the path of how we replace those parking meters, for instance, in other parts of the city. So that's an orientation on this plan. I want to emphasize, in terms of the architecture, at Trammell Pro Center, for instance, we went into the lobby and we really pulled every single finish out of that lobby and came back with new finishes to make the building feel like it was brand new. Here, we have a lot to work with. So the idea, I know we're not here to talk about the interior lobbies, but we're going to preserve a very large part of the interior architecture as it was originally designed by Philip Johnson. We'll come back to a few things like flooring, obviously heavy lift of the FF&E and other things that relate back to the uses that happen in the lobby themselves. Now the fun stuff. So this is all in your package, of course. So this is St. Paul in the future with our hotel arrival sequence happening. So this is the bird's eye view down, looking into the entry. You can see the 3-meal restaurant that serves the hotel, the lane that accounts for bringing 2 lanes of traffic off the street for valet, and then a covered sort of an artistic expression of a canopy that will extend from the entry to the hotel back to Elm Street. And then obviously you can see the beautiful building that remains untouched behind the entry itself. I should mention on the Elm Street side and on the Main Street side of the building, the only intervention that we're making with the entries themselves is we're coming back with a thin wall, structural glazing system for those entries to introduce more light into those spaces. Other than that, we're not touching the exterior of the building itself. Okay, so this probably is a good opportunity. This is our model that Megan and the HKS team very carefully assembled for us. So this is a bird's eye view as if you were in the Zodiac room at Neiman Marcus looking down on the property, if you will, if you've been in the Zodiac room lately. So we're looking down at this angle back toward the new podium structure. So as you can see here, we have very carefully skinned the garage on three sides. We've done this before on Ross Avenue. I'll continue to relate back to it, but in that particular scenario, we knew it was important to, for the building to make an architectural contribution to a very important street. We're doing the same here. Our team can talk about the materiality of this, and we've the idea right now is for this to be a fluted facade that repeats itself at the 3 Mill restaurant for the hotel on St. Paul Street. So there's some relationship between the two. We were careful not to do something with the facade of the podium itself that would attempt to copy the design of the Comerica Bank Tower facade, because we didn't believe that would be successful. And also that it would relate up to the ballroom space that sits atop the podium itself. So the fluted facade happens again on the ballroom glazing, as you can see here. So going back to why it's so important for us to use the 1/3 of the site that we're using for this to make this a successful project. So a luxury hotel needs a ballroom space that's successful, sellable. It doesn't need a ballroom space that's sort of shoehorned into an existing office building. It was never intended to receive that use. And so the podium gives us the flexibility to force out a steel structure that is perched on the podium itself. Now we can have pool decks that are separated between the residential use and the hotel use. Actually, we have the pool deck for the hotel sitting atop the ballroom, and the pool deck for the residences below on the lid of the garage itself, so that we're creating, again, an appropriate separation between the two. And then you can see the ballroom space here. It'll be a column-free space that will contribute to the success of the hotel ultimately, which of course is what we're all going for, a project that will be successful in the future. How we doing, Brendan?
Very great.
Anything to add? Jump right in.
Oh,
So now this is the view of the same corner. The same corner as if you were walking out of Neiman Marcus on Main Street and looking back at the building. So this is intended to show you the significance of the retail that's happening at the ground. You can also start to see down here, and you'll get a better view in the next rendering, the Paseo in the mid block on Main Street. You don't see it on Elm Street, but actually get a better view of it there. But this will turn really a dead corner where you've got steps and plaza and fountains and things that the pedestrian doesn't really get to use into a really exciting retail contributions downtown.
I think the other thing just to highlight, and you can kind of see it in this, is there is a significant grade change as you look across the site in the retail. And so part of the design of this podium and what we were thinking about it is making sure that the retail experience for the pedestrian is both great at Main and Irving, but also at Irving and Elm, in dealing with that grade change across it, so that you could have successful retail for both tenants in the surrounding community and pedestrians on the street.
So this may look like deja vu. This is actually the corner of that. Well, I said this is as if you're walking out of 7-Eleven at Elm in Irving across the street. So similar, you can see the effectiveness of the three sides of skin on the podium. The retail that wraps the corner on both sides, and there's Paseo in the mid block, and then we've got some depictions of the concept for the interior of Paseo here next. So this is the residential lobby, and you can understand the connectivity and relationship to the tower itself in this rendering.
And just for clarity, that's all parking above the retail, right?
Yes, so it's
That's-
400 parking spaces that serve predominantly the multifamily apartments above. So again, going back to the success of the project ultimately, which is what everyone I think wants for this, parking for residents. If you have to tell them to walk 2 or 3 blocks or even a block sometimes through Skybridge to get to their residence, you're starting sort of behind the 8 ball, if you will, in terms of leasing that space. So we knew that was important, and we had real estate to be able to accommodate. This is a depiction of a concept for the Paseo itself. We envision it being illuminated, the ceiling and the sides. There are other examples, and throughout Dallas, good examples and not as good examples of this condition. We know that it's important. We know that we've got a responsibility to make a contribution in the Paseo itself. One idea that we're relating back to, Elm used to be sort of Theater Row in the day. The Majestic, of course, is still there, but the idea of light and introducing that into the space and doing something engaging with the art expression in the Paseo will be an important part as we advance the design. By the way, we are at 100% schematic design with our consultants at this point. So we're working with a general contractor, and we're at a point where we really we have a good budget for the project. So speaking back to Brendan's comment about a methodical process, we didn't want to come to you all until we had a project that we believe would action. Then another couple of important, a little more mundane, but important details for the project. So I mentioned earlier on Elm, we're introducing a lay-by lane, which is important for the residents to get their cars off the street, whether it's for DoorDash or for guests who are dropping off in front of the residential. We have some pictures here that are actually time-stamped of the reality of the lane of traffic nearest the building on Elm Street. The reality is that really most of the day you have cars parked in the lane that we'll be taking and incorporating into our site to make it better for the pedestrian and for the residents here. So we're actually bumping out, and Ken's here, obviously you can talk about the details of what we're doing, but we're bumping out from the curb here and creating a planting zone with benches for seating. We're doing the same throughout to protect the vehicles in the lay-by lane. And then we'll have a nice generous planting area buffer all the way down to Irving, which doesn't exist today. Right now, you've got cars parked right there, most likely. So we really are pleased with the direction of this, and think it'll again make a contribution to the success of Elm Street and to the pedestrian experience on Elm. And then the last board, and I think we'll open it up to Q&A. This is just a relationship of the existing banking hall versus the podium itself. You can see here we have a shade study. We're not adding additional shade onto the Wilson building, which has historic significance across the street. So we won't be adding additional incremental shade to that building. And the distance between the two is very generous, 65 feet across the street at its closest point. We have several other elevations in the package as well that I think really help express what's happening on each side of the facade, so we can dig into those and field questions. With that, I'll open it up to your questions.
Very good. The way we like to do this is, we ask you questions. If there are any questions, panel members ask questions, and then we engage into a conversation and feedback. So with that, starting with, are there any questions for the presenter?
Yeah, my only question was about on Elm Street, this residential drop off is the, well, I guess it's inclusive of all the curbs staying in their current location?
No, I think that if you looked at the curves today, essentially it runs right along here straight, and that's what we were showing. Just the condition, technically, there's no parking during morning and afternoon rush hour, but as you can see, when Elm's at its busiest, which is usually afternoon rush hour, parking continues, so you already have this lane taken out, and so for us, really, when we looked at the experience and the street level experience, adding sort of benches, planting, and bump outs, we thought was more protective, safer for pedestrians, and then also allowed us to capture sort of, you know, a 4-car pull off just for the residential straight in front, while also creating a better experience on the rest of the site.
My question was about how ventilation is being handled for the podium, so it's steepest, so, and it looks pretty solid, and with the ballroom at the top.
We might tackle the question about EVIS along with ventilation for the garage as well. You all want to speak to it'll be mechanically ventilated.
Sure, yeah. And if you look at, there's like a gasket kind of between the two.
Uh-huh.
So this is a pretty significant. Let's piece off so you can see it better. So right here, all of the ventilation happens actually on the sides. This is all louvered. And so we can draw from one side and exhaust out the other.
Okay.
So it gives you cross ventilation, and then we can actually pull. We have it at the base as well to draw up the ramps as well.
Actually, you can see that in the last page.
Yeah, so there's the
The
louver.
connection between the two. And then do you want to talk about, Ryan, the materiality?
Sure, we brought kind of a mock-up sample of the limit. Toilet, but it's included. This is the scale of the actual flutes. So a very big scale, but really nice finishing. And then this same material will be, the terracotta piece will be used on the volumes or the hotel drop-off side. So a mixture of, we have fluted glass, and then we have fluted terracotta, and then fluted prefab. So they'll all read the same, especially since these are 15 feet in the air, so you never get really close to it, but then the ones that you get closer to are the higher range, so.
That was my question, thank you.
Yes, Wendy.
We talked a little bit about the sustainability aspects of the project, in particular, how it relates to the ground plane and what you're doing on that ground.
Or if you maybe talk high level, and then Ken has some.
Yeah, I mean, Slate takes, and our overall platform takes sustainability very seriously, both from, as a steward for real estate development, but also frankly, in this day and age, that's what capital requires for projects like this, to have sustainability. And so really, when we look at this adaptive reuse and trying to utilize existing materials in the building, especially as it relates to the lobby, that's one way that we're, factoring in today, but it's continuing going to be a focus as we move from schematic designs into design development, how we pick materials, how we source materials, for the ultimate project. And then as it relates to the ground plane, I think we can get over a little bit about adding greenery and a little bit more of that experience on the ground plane to the pedestrian.
Sure, we look at sustainability obviously from not only environmental and build, but health and wellness. And so we're looking at to kind of preserve the integrity of the existing landscape architecture is to use the street tree locations as they were originally designed where possible. We know there's a lot of infrastructure that's buried along and down low, and the deeper we dig, the more we disrupt. So we're looking at using the existing tree locations and doing silva-cell so that we get healthy root growth, we get healthy planting. We've added, I'd have to go back and look how much more square footage of planting that we've added to the site. The site was predominantly hardscape pavement, sheet drainage to the curb. So we brought that in and used landscape as part of that process. We've also provided a lot of areas for kind of health and wellness for people to get out of the building. Obviously, the park locations are closed, go to stroll around the block. By putting planting in between cars and vehicular, adding that planting area in there, added to kind of greening up a little bit of the base. And then we actually also brought it up through the building as well on some of the terrain.
Okay, so next, on the garage facade, your fluted material right there, is it transparent? Or is it just one big monolithic facade that wraps the corners of the building there?
It's a singular facade, so it's not intended to be transparent. So if you compare it to Ross Avenue, the garage that we constructed there, there's a little bit of transparency that's happening. That introduces other challenges because you've got headlights coming through the glass and it sort of breaks this notion that, oh, wait, that's a parking garage. And so the intention is to create interest and activity on the facade itself while really maintaining an enclosed.
Is that lit during the evening? You got to talk about the studies or anything like that?
Yeah, we actually have a sort of an evening rendering that depicts we can provide that to you all, that depicts the lighting scheme for the facade.
Yeah, the expectation is it would be lit, and then our focus, and Ryan talked to us a little bit, is, the fact that it's 15 feet in the air, focusing more on what the material is for the pedestrian on the retail and having that transparency, and then creating an architectural, dynamic to the facade with the fluting and uplighting so that it always sort of has an interesting texture and character to it, whether it's during daytime or during the evening.
Thank you.
My question to you guys, you say that you are building, the plan is to build 430 parking spaces on this building. Those parking spaces are meant to accommodate residential units. That's right.
In large part, there will also be some availability for hotel as well.
So with that, you say that you have currently 700 spaces in the buildings?
Below grade, yes.
Approximately 7.
So what would be the ratio for office square footage? What is the parking ratio for office that you plan to have?
That's an important detail that I didn't touch on before. So the 700 parking spaces will now be fully dedicated to just 586,000 square feet of office space, whereas before those were spread across 1.6 million square feet. And so the parking ratio inside the building, which is very important for office leasing, goes from minuscule, very selective, you have to feel like you won the lottery if you get space, to now you have over 1 per 1,000 parking dedicated to the office tenants in the building, which is competitive. Now you can imagine you've got a managing partner of a law firm who may have an assistant that's worked with them for 30 years, and he or she is walking 2 blocks to the building every day. Now he can say, or she can say, hey, you know what, you should park underneath the building because we have availability. So that's a real differentiator for the office.
Okay, so over 1 per 1,000 for office. For residential is, what is the ratio that you have? Is it per bedroom?
Chickens, what do we? So
1.3 per bedroom.
One for
How about hotel? It's 1 per key?
No, 1 per key is code. We haven't seen that be a requirement for hotels, and we're very active in Uptown, and many hotels have gone to half a key per room. The feedback that we're getting from the flags themselves right now is that it'll be a valet-dominated program for them. So we'll have the ability between the below-grade parking that we can share with the office and the new parking structure with the residences, where we do have some excess capacity for the hotel to accommodate really any flag that we select.
Great, thanks.
Presentation was thorough, I have questions.
Just questions, or we can just discuss comments as well?
All right. So,
Can I ask one more question?
Of course,
Sorry.
of course.
What is the floor height for the parking podium?
10 feet.
It is, okay.
okay, usually I ask my peer members of the band to start, but this time I'd like to start because I can't wait. So, and I'm sorry, I missed your name.
Ramsey March.
Ramsey.
Brendan.
So thank you for the presentation. Thank you for acting on this asset. This building is a landmark in Dallas. You all know that. And you just told us you have worked with other landmark buildings in Dallas. So that's great. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for taking on the challenges. So starting with the very positive moves that you have made, really appreciate the 3 sides, how you guys took advantage of the building, the internal organization, the elevator banks, and how we cleverly, gave one side to this is residential, that's hotel, that's office. Very, very nice. That's clever. Activates those three sides of the block. The idea of having mixed use tower, that's also great. You're not the first in town to do that. But it's a trend, it's a positive trend. It brings vitality to the city center 24/7. So that's a good move. What I have trouble with is the image right straight ahead in front of me. I understand the parking situation. You were very clear that the building currently is underparked. However, bringing a podium that is lifeless other than at street level to this part of downtown makes me very, very concerned. Especially when you have across the street, you have Wilson building, right? That's the Wilson, right across the street, which is another jewel, I think it's from 1911, if I'm not mistaken. It has survived several cycles of development and upturn and downturns, and still it works. It has been regenerated with different uses. But now, the volume that you propose, the mass that you propose right across Wilson building, again, the street level, very, very nice. What about this? It's 1, 2, 3, 4, about 4 levels or so of a block that is windowless, that has no activity. Sure, the ceramic element here, the fluted ceramic, is beautiful in itself, but that, no matter what you do, no matter how many lights you throw at it at night, it's not life. It is a blank facade. And this image tells everything that we need to know about it. It makes me very, very concerned. It seems that we are going backwards. It seems that we are doing something that ill-advised developments from the 50s and 60s would do to cities across the United States. I'm concerned with that. You have, on the other side over here, on the opposite side, the hotel entrance, excuse me, Brandon, right there behind you. That's a beautiful, beautiful, elegant, lovely example on how to bring a 60-story high-rise gracefully to the ground. With a canopy, with a drop-off, with a restaurant, wonderful. That is just marvelous. But then we turn around, and on the other side of the block, it's the opposite. So I don't have the answer on how to fix the parking issue. I know it's an issue. I realize that. But I suspect that this is not it. While it may solve the parking issue, it will very likely not help everything that happens around this building and everything else around it. Neiman Marcus, who knows what will happen to Neiman Marcus, but I'm skeptical that it's not going to be helpful to downtown. Sure, we will pay once again at base, so it's welcome, but you say that currently the plaza that we have, the banking hall plus the plaza in front of it is dead. Well, not quite. I worked in downtown for several years. I walked past this property a couple of times a week at least. I saw people, enjoying themselves, enjoying the park. It's an open area. It's an extension of the sidewalk, and it brings some relief to a crowded spot of downtown. It's like a mini pocket park, which can be enhanced, could be enhanced, sure. But again, I'm not sure that this is the answer. So I'm really, really skeptical of this solution, the parking solution that your team is proposing for this part of downtown.
Just to provide additional context on this, it's not just a parking solution. In order to get a flag in a hotel of this nature, you need to offer a ballroom experience that is not just forced into the lobby. So really what we looked at this was how do you create a podium to create a ballroom space for a hotel and an outdoor space for both office tenants, hotel residents, and residential residents.
Understood.
So,
You have a good point. Ballrooms, however, have, when designed well, they have life. They bring life to the street level. We have other examples in downtown and elsewhere. If you guys have designed hotel, you know how it works. Now, if this block becomes a ballroom block, imagine for a moment that it's not parking. That is a ballroom conference center. Well, we could have pre-function spaces lining up the edge of this block. Generous windows with views to the outside and vice versa. So understand your point. That could be solved. Retail, ballroom on top, lovely. But retail, several floors of parking, blank, and then the ballroom on top that is not seen from the street by virtue of the geometry. That might work for the hotel, yes, but it's not going to work for the city. That's my point. I understand, that's why I said, I understand the parking issue, I understand you just said the hotel issue. But on our side, we advocate for the city. And if the city works well, then it benefits your building. If around you, if stuff around you doesn't work well, you might have an island that might work, but it's an island. Why would someone decide to leave downtown to isolate themselves from everything else around downtown? That's counterintuitive. So anyway, I wanted to share with you all and with my peers my take on the proposal. Who would like to go on? Okay, let's start on that side. Vice, please.
I'm an architect, I'm civil engineer, traffic background, some feedback would be in that. In this case, I think the good thing is you have a very good team. I personally know Scott and work with them, because you know, take that everyone. From study perspective, I'm assuming one thing that I'm pretty positive it's already done, but do you have approval for this site circulation from the city? You formally received approval on their product, and that happens on they call to come back.
It's in process. Yeah, we've got a lot of reasons.
It's a
Process, yeah, yes, and city staff on that, but I mean, it is one thing that I think is crucial to the plan itself, and it's really, yeah, it's, because otherwise, without it, I mean, you have the meters over there, so you're gonna have cars there, like we're showing, even when it's not supposed to be. And when people get dropped off, you're just gonna get double parked in this lane. Yes, this really does capture that lane.
That is what I said that because right now it is 4 lanes with 1 lane dedicated to buses. That leaves 3 lanes. Of the 3 lanes, yes, I agree. So I think the best thing we've done is shown that look, yes, there are 3 lanes and we're taking 1 away, but that lane is not being used. So all I'm saying is it is critical to your plan. I will try to close the loop on it as fast as I can. Now, putting the other head on, I will tell you what the challenge, why the red flag that I see. And you are prepared to address it. That drop off, let's talk about the one on the corner of St. Paul. See, that's a one-way street coming down. You're making 180-degree turn. I see challenges with that. I'm assuming you have already done a turn analysis to make sure people are not trying to turn in and then they are backed up and so I'm assuming the traffic study is being done on it.
You guys want to speak to that at all? You're referring to this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see vehicles are going this way and then they're going to come down.
Yeah, so especially because it's a one-way street, so I see that happening a lot, and my concern is just please make sure that your spacing allows you plenty of flexibility. That it is not just for a passenger car, also for a box truck, because there will be people, delivery guy, and then he's all of a sudden gonna come in. And second thing is, that is again why I say that curb cut, the new curb cut does not meet current standards, so you have to request an exception. So make sure you get that addressed right away. One other again, it's again, on-site circulation, if I'm Gus, I'm not Gus. I can always also say that, look, because Main Street is two-way, I also see a lot of people who wanna get to the garage entry, coming on Main, cut through the Paseo, and then do another U-turn to get into the garage.
You're referring to this garage?
Yep, that,
Right, you got it.
which is not very desirable.
Yes,
Again,
because you'll have to swing out to the middle lane.
yes, that's what I'm saying, with the visibility of the trees, it can become challenging, especially because Main, Avenue is one way. The speeds are always downtown, but speeds can be, so it's can be a safety concern doing that kind of thing. So that is why again, I was stress strongly, please get this, if you want to do it this way, then get it approved. And then thinking back on what we heard, if suppose as a result of that, we decide that, look, we may have to change something and, you know, parking or ballroom or whatever, if we can have more space, it will help. We will say, like, I don't think we can take it or not, I'm assuming it's a function of, you know, structural constraints. And then I was just curious about why it is that we in the middle, is that because of the matching the finished floor elevation with the office?
Yes.
Okay, that's what. Because this piece is almost 5% of the south side,
Yes.
which is not desirable, in my opinion. Yeah, so my biggest suggestion would be please get your site circulation officially approved, because a lot of stuff hinges on you having that as well as this. I see both of them as probably potentially problematic, just depending on what your TIA shows, so let's get that checked.
Yeah, I would say that, you know, the conversations with the city were pretty advanced, and then we put a pin in it, you know, and then came to this conversation,
Yeah.
so we're on go.
Yeah,
Appreciate the
a
comments.
lot of conversations with Gus and David, and as you know,
But that-
the formal,
Yeah,
and as you know, formal approval and their mind is approved documents, plans. So we've had a lot of conversations, feel really positive about it, and obviously continue this as we
that's good. But I had a very good presentation, I mean, it answered all of my questions, I had no question to ask.
There's also a site circulation, vehicle circulation specific diagram and package with arrows where you can see where the intended flow of traffic goes. I will follow on one comment. We've studied the city quite a bit from a vehicular standpoint, and we think that the grade change is a little bit of a blessing in disguise, because I think it really won't encourage that person that's just trying to cut the corner. It's going to feel more like okay, I'm coming in here because I belong here. Now, people figure things out over time, but it'll discourage the traffic that
Yeah.
intended to go through that
See,
space.
I'm not concerned about the opening on Main Street. One, it's got a grade, so anybody coming on Main, who wants to turn in, it's gonna be slow. What I'm more concerned about is, people trying to cut through, and then trying to get into the garage. And that would be, they're gonna be doing all kinds of funny stuff. Now imagine if some of those are cheap like me, that are in a hotel, they say, no, I'm not watching the line, I don't read that way. Yes, out of town. Yeah,
Unfortunately, we have to deal with all the people who are not road followers and anticipate what they may do
Yeah.
in terms of traffic.
yeah, so,
Well, I think also the intent of that garage, I would tell you, there's just not the south part. It's to be a resource for the existing valet,
must
so
be.
they can move the cars out of one alley right in there, and, there's a parking 2 block to a block and a half away that serves more of a public parking option.
But I like the idea of taking a lane away, just to, slow it down a little bit more, but just make sure that you get a sign off on it.
Thank you, President.
Okay, well, thank you for your presentation and your 2 years of hard work on this. You're correct, it's an extraordinarily important site. I appreciate you recognizing the significance of the location and its relationship to the historical core of the city. And that it is an iconic building. I do historic buildings, and so this is not old enough to be historic, but it has all of the features that we would expect once it gets old enough. It has an internationally known architect. It is representative of important design and development trends in Dallas at that time. and you know, it is an iconic structure in downtown Dallas. I start to depart there with some of this, though. You're concerned about it being designed as foreboding and like having a fortress quality. I don't see that. What I do see is something that we as a panel often look for, encourage, and don't often get, and that is that maybe it's fortress-like because it's pulled back from the street and there's fairly significant open area, community space, plantings and all separating those entrances and buildings from the street. The problem I always perceive, because I also office downtown for a number of years, is that it just wasn't, it wasn't activated, that things were not put there to take advantage of that quality. You have a building that has quality that we crave downtown, but unfortunately, you're not able to keep that. I will not take issue with your program requirements to accommodate the new usage you have it, as much as it's unfortunate that we have to do some of these things and lose those spaces. But I am going to take the issue with the execution of it. I think, again, I do historic buildings, and I operate on completely the opposite end of the architectural spectrum than my colleague Rico here, who does beautiful modern buildings. And he and I are almost perfectly aligned in our disappointment in response in this downtown environment with some of the things we're doing. Mine goes a little further. I have some concern with the other side, with the restaurant and the new ramp, and you know, this building. It took some effort to refer back to the historic context of this part downtown with its symmetry and its detailing, and that's I don't agree with him there. I think, you know, we place some things in front of that I would probably recommend we do differently. But you know, one of the points he touched on that struck me is, well, we are on the same plane with that. You know, back in the context, when you are surrounded by the Wilson, the Magnolia is right nearby. We haven't mentioned Tychus across the street over here. You are in one of the most important contextual locations in downtown Dallas. And again, I love the idea that with all that stuff there that was done earlier, we have a building that sets back from the street and provides us some break between those original urban environments and the new one. And I'll accept that we can't maintain that with the new program for the building, but in terms of how it's executed here, there's your context of no effort to duplicate details. That's good. We shouldn't do that when dealing with an important context. But there are innumerable options between replication and turning your back to it. And this to me is that, you know, the windowless, opaque, minimal feature, gigantic, you know, very, very large scale facade, particularly of the garage addition, to me is unresponsive to what we need downtown, and does not, it's too big to fade in the background. It makes its own statement, which I think is incompatible with the context of downtown that we have here right now. We're always looking for either green space or activity. And here we have a different kind of activity. We have retail space. But again, it's the same thing. It's the walls of glass. It's really almost featureless except for what happens inside those retail spaces. If those are, you know, and you're dependent on the retail spaces, it doesn't use any of the architecture like older buildings would do. The architecture was part of that construct and the perception and all, and added to the entrance. And it seems like we like those kinds of places. Every place we travel you know, a lot of, we tend to be drawn to those kinds of older retail experiences and away from the sort of, and Eaton references exactly, the mid-century, large featureless plaza, too clean, too out of scale with human context. We deal with that a lot because Dallas developed a lot during those years. I would suggest that the difficulty this city has had dealing with some of the approaches we've taken in the past is the reason we have this panel. This panel is here to help folks, to give some kind of unification, some kind of consistency to the vision of how we respond to downtown. And I agree with you, Rico. This to me reads much more as a fallback to before those panel years. So I'm sorry, I can't be more supportive of you here. To me, that this is an approach. This is an approach to downtown. And you've got to have a garage. There's other things you can do to the way it's being articulated. Now it's an approach that we don't need. I think that's detrimental to these contexts. And I would encourage you, if you have time, to think about that, to think about moving someplace closer to the responding to the context of downtown that you've inherited there.
Can I ask a follow-on question?
Sure.
So is the objection in part, I hear facade, I hear massing, just the massed volume, which unfortunately contains cars that support a critical part of the program. Massing, facade, windows, could you drill down on the elements themselves that would get you closer to comfortable with, if we're talking about Verde in particular?
If I had your 2 years to look at it, I would. But sitting here across here, it needs enough. When we do new additions, major additions to historic buildings, for instance, we go for compatibility. It's actually inappropriate to replicate something historic. It is what you do is you adopt elements from the historic context and put them into something that is compatible, that looks natural and just goes with the historic context. So there's any number of things here. In this thing, I don't see anything here I would identify that way, except maybe the horizontal demarcations. There is something about the other buildings in that, but the windowless fluted thing, the flutes are not something you see. Windowless is not something you see. We need human scale, we need articulation, we need light and play of all kinds. The buildings around you have all kinds, even the one you've got has different treatments in different areas. So yes, whether they're penetrations or some sort of pattern on the outside that starts to do that, whether it's, perhaps it is like a normal city block, that facade becomes different, multiple different elements that don't try to fool you into thinking they're different buildings that were constructed at different times, but nonetheless respond to that kind of architectural rhythm that we see everywhere else in downtown Dallas, except where these super buildings come and take the entire. So it's I would say that again, the elevation at the street, there's lots of opportunity for architecture there, and I think architecture, without knowing who the tenants are, how that will work. We talk a lot about how the landscape can adapt or improves the experience. But, and I'm always as the architect, I'm always saying, well, it's not just about trees. I mean, the architecture can do that too. And I just don't see that, that's all about people and what's in the stores. So so yes, all of the elements in a building and that whole perception, I don't know how else to answer you at this point. It's a design issue that I think needs a lot more thought.
I appreciate it. What we presented today is the result of a lot of iterations and options that were presented by our design team, of course. And so it's intentional what we presented, but it's not the only thing we looked at as it relates to the architecture on the project itself.
That's good to know that you have been examining apparently other alternatives, other avenues. Thank you, Norman, for your comments. And I know we have several people to hear from, but since you asked us, the two of us, how we could elaborate, I'd like to, before it's too late, I'd like to answer your question as well. See, if you are working with the building that has, you are working with this building because it has certain virtues, and that's what attracted you. That's why the building becomes attractive to you. It has a presence, it has character, it is recognizable, it has life around it. It's a landmark in downtown. So how could we layer by layer examine what makes this building successful today? Sure, it has its downsides as well. Those we have to fix. But what makes it successful today, and how can we bring those elements to the extension? Sounds a bit abstract, but if we go by that rule, I suspect you'll be much more successful here. Every other side, this side and the St. Paul side, Main Street on the other side. Sorry,
Main Street on the side.
Main Street on the other side. Elm, St. Paul, Main Street, all work very well. What happens right there? How can this emulate that? Regardless of program, I understand again parking situation, but that's not. Let's prevent parking from killing your beauty, from killing life on the street, and that's, I think, we are at least right here.
Yeah, and those are really great comments, and we'll take them back with us. Going back to where we started the presentation, which was our fears that we have the building is 15 or 20% leased. We want to bring people into the building that will activate the neighborhood. That's the goal.
Mark.
We're ready? We're good?
I think we are.
I think these guys have already heard a lot. Well, first of all, thank you guys for being here today. This is probably one of the best assets, I think, in all of downtown Dallas, having worked in downtown for 10 years. I remember as a kid growing up here in Dallas and driving around with my dad when this building was being created. And he's like, this will probably be the last big building in Dallas. And I think it was. I think that was right at the time when the economy was failing, but I do remember this building going up. So a lot of memory to it. When I look at this, I understand all the challenges that you guys have. But I keep coming back to it. If I lived in the Wilson building and I'm on the 3rd floor, what do I want to see across the street? And I don't know if I want to see a lifeless facade. If I'm living in downtown and I'm an urban dweller, I want to see windows. I want to see apartments. I want to see other people. I want to see activity. And to have these 3 streets of Burbank, Main, and Elm be dominated by a parking garage, it's a tough struggle. It's like, we're downtown Dallas, we can do better than that. And I do understand all your parking challenges. My question to you is, how do we do better on that parking garage facade? Don't do what Heinz did in Deep Elm, where you can see the parking garage and it's strange and dead and it could be better. But how does your design team make that facade come to life to be real activity for downtown? So when I'm on the street and I'm walking, there's movements, there's something happening there. It's just placemaking, right? Right now, I feel that we struggle on the placemaking aspect other than a monument of concrete or whatever you're putting on the building. As far as you started the presentation and it was all about, we really care about the pedestrian, you can see that in here, except what I would say is I take the exception of Elm Street. Elm Street, because this is where all your activity is coming in and out of the building from a vehicular standpoint, I feel like I'm playing Frogger. There are 4 opportunities for me to get ran over by a car in a very short period of time between hotel valet drop-off, somebody entering the garage, I guess, to your residential that probably is late getting somewhere in their hurry, the paseo that goes through there, and the other garage is getting in there. I really worry about that, especially when every one of the people that presented here talked about the pedestrian experience. I don't know how you change that, because you do have all those entries and access points, but it really does give me a lot of concern that, Elm, which is actually a pretty pleasant walk right now. If you're downtown and you walk there, because it's on the north side, it's shaded, because you're bringing activity, but you're also bringing a lot of access in and out of that street right there. So I don't know how we need to try to improve that. Then the last 2 points, I would say the Paseo. I wish you didn't have it. We're in an urban condition. I know you have to have it. So my suggestion on that is, how does that feel? Not like the tunnel that goes through the city hall with the blinky lights and, everything that goes through there. How does this feel like a real public Paseo? Is there transparency in the glass? Do you see people activating the areas that are right next to it? How does it feel more like a street than a private Paseo in that area? And then last one, Hervé, just looking at your street sections, I guess it's on page 23. I would ask that you guys try to give more than 6.5 feet for the pedestrian sidewalk in the center of the tree, the retaining wall. That is not a good urban street width right there. And I do understand you're trying to activate the retail. I don't know if it's pushing your retail further back so you can get more width on those walks, but Hervé is compromised right now on the section that you guys showed.
We looked at a lot of options in that regard. Obviously, the push and pull between patio, which is, active freeze that retail activity to.
Yeah, and as those trees get bigger and grow, that width gets smaller and smaller. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. I really appreciate what you're doing in terms of investing in downtown Dallas. And we are all aware of how difficult it is to sustain office leases in downtown. So we really appreciate developers like you that are making such an enormous investment, because we understand this is huge, to make this a mixed-use project. I don't want to elaborate on what's already been said multiple times, but I do think there might be an opportunity of perhaps bringing the event space down to level 2. I know it complicates the way that the parking garage works, but I think it would really help, because we understand that you need the parking. So if the parking doesn't happen, your project probably doesn't work. So maybe there's an opportunity to bring that activated space down lower. It's going to be a taller space than the 2 levels of office, of garage, and it'll certainly improve the situation from the pedestrian side, but also from the Wilson building.
I also won't belabor the comments that have already been said. I really am excited about this project, and I appreciate the thoughtfulness and the spirit that's built into it, because it's clear that you're passionate about it and you're excited about it and improving the urban conditions. So I think that I really like the suggestion of bringing the ballroom space down, because it is, like we've already talked about, it's sort of the hulking mass, and the most challenging part of this building is lowering the scale so that it feels like a human can interact with it. So I'm thinking of the garage, and my colleagues will know the name of it, but the other one downtown that's a mid-century garage that has the weird openings in it, So I don't think that you need to trick anybody into thinking this isn't a garage, I don't mind seeing the occasional headlight as long if I feel like there is some opening. It just feels very hulking and solid, and it doesn't breathe. So I think just keeping that in mind as you move forward, but generally speaking, I think that if you can keep that lightness in mind, then it's going to be really successful, just bringing more life into it, like we've said. So I'm excited to see how it develops.
And I'm a landscape architect, so I won't venture into architecture, except to ask the obvious question, which is, you have looked at undergrounding the parking here. Have you already explored looking at digging and burying the parking?
We can't. The entire site is below grade.
Okay.
Parking.
Okay. Well, I had to ask.
Underneath. So we're actually restoring the garage below in order to build above.
Well,
Excuse me, sorry, just someone. So is there underground parking below this property?
Yeah,
Below the
the
existing
entire
parking?
site is underground.
Okay, okay.
not just
Yes.
the car.
Yes.
Okay. Well, in that case, I did want to go even a little further than what Mark said earlier about the Frogger comment. it looks like from this existing plan, there are no vehicular penetrations as the current super block exists. I would challenge the team to figure out a way to go from 6 new vehicular penetrations, find a way to do 4. Even just that one gesture, I think will really help the pedestrian experience. And the other big pedestrian experience that I flagged in addition to the Elm Street one was the on St. Paul Street. It's not clear to me how exactly that dimension works from the vegetation to the street, because it looks like the trees are planted in the middle of the sidewalk. And to Mark's comment, you know, it's really about what's the dimension between the tree and your next impediment, right? Whether it's building face or wall or landscape, and trying to make sure that there's at least 8 feet clear, I think is a good minimum goal. And I know that'll take some pushing and pulling with that drop off, but I think of a downtown experience as one in which 2 people can be walking next to each other and there's someone walking in the other direction and nobody has to dart back and forth. I think 8 is kind of the bare minimum dimension there. So just making sure that all of those dimensions still work. And then similarly, I recognize that there's a comment made about preserving the original tree locations. I kind of feel like on Elm Street, where you're capturing more space, what if we just push the trees into that newly captured space, and that also increases that pedestrian dimension right there, and probably would be better soil conditions for those trees to thrive. Starting to be pretty tough with that really intense shadow on the north side, so that seems like a good opportunity to follow up on.
Did we include the diagram with the overlay of the existing?
So that's what I'm kind of suggesting. I see Kent nodding his head is rather than planting in the same place, I presume a lot of those things have to come out anyway, just pushing them out could be a good way to.
You might have to get a license from the city of Dallas because that's considered public right of way back in there.
Yeah, absolutely. Good point.
There may be a digital advertising kiosk there someday.
Yeah, I believe. Other than that, I just wanted to also bring attention to that corner at Hervé and Main Street. How yes, it's not a very successful activated plaza right now, but it is one of those rare moments of relief in downtown. And if there's any way to pull back a little bit, give a little bit more of that relief area, I think that right now it seems like as an average pedestrian, you're losing a lot and not getting a whole lot in return around the building. And I think that there's got to be some more creative solutions to preserving some of that feel, such as the curb bump outs on Elm, very successful there. I think that there's just, when I look at that elevation of the 110 feet going to 65, it feels a little tight as a pedestrian on the ground level, and I wonder if there could be a little more thought to that particular corridor as well. I think that's all I
Good
have.
comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Sorry, can I add one more? I made a note to myself and then forgot to mention it. The reason I had asked about the sort of floor height is because as we think about the future, and you're having to deal with design decisions, you know, that were made 50 years ago that we're dealing with now. You know, maybe this will continue on in the future and continue to be built up upon. But is there a way to increase the floor height so that it could convert in the future from parking to usable space? And is that something that you've considered?
Yeah, I mean, really what we looked at is what that dynamic is of the floor levels meeting the existing tower floor
Sure.
levels. And so that had a lot of impact on where the hotel ballroom is located, because you need to have ballroom, you have to be separated from other meeting space, you have to have coherent pre-function space. So we did look at all those levels and including how it accesses into the residential elevator bank. So we've studied it a lot, can continue to look at that. But
I think it's something that you can keep in mind because these parking requirements are so dynamic and, you know, we could see a point in time where we just go to, I don't know, blind parking or something, you know, and probably not too far away. So just keeping flexibility for the future in mind.
One follow on to that is the unfortunate thing about this building is it's so underparked as it stands today that we're raising the level of service for the office. I think if there is a day when, say, the apartments, you know, they're using Waymo or they're using or whatever else, automated vehicles, more than likely a majority of the parking in the new structure will that demand will shift to the office use away from the multifamily. So I think there probably will still be a sustained need for this 1.6 million square foot volume space for some amount of parking on site.
I can ask a brief question. Which component is creating the greatest parking demand here? Is it the residential or the hotel?
Residential.
Okay.
Well, the office, no?
Well, the office
Got
is
the
the
office.
office. Yeah, we have the office underneath the building.
The office. Somebody else bumped it up.
So something has to, if, let's say the new parking structure that exists, now you're dealing with just 700 spaces, so either you lose vast amounts of program or impair the success of the office, because maybe you're having to take, 400 spaces below and dedicate them to multi, now you only have 300 spaces for the office. And you're not gonna have success retaining tenants in that scenario. So we've looked at a lot of options. The multifamily, the apartment dweller is the one that is going to be the absolute most sensitive to having parking on the site.
And then also the hotel from the parking structure, the parking structure itself, that actually be that for the amenity space that the hotel requires.
Yeah, because there is no second floor in the tower, right? And then the third floor, you get into mechanical. So if you think of actually the system design of the tower, it actually limits you from being able to have any connectivity from the tower down into the lower level of this podium. So that's stuff that we've studied, where the cooling towers are, all this, those sort of elements.
Is the parking structure totally maxed out, from facade to facade, in the new extension building right there? Just worked out to be perfect.
And there's not an elevator bank in the new addition, you're using existing, is what you're saying, right?
There's additional elevators that will serve the parking structure.
Okay.
So you could see.
Oh, I see.
So that's the board of the parking.
Okay.
So it gives an opportunity, and then there's a connection on the third level so that the resident can go straight from the parking structure into the amenity floor for the residents as well, which is nice.
Any other questions, comments, feedback?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I've been hearing the feedback about the facade and how monolithic it can be. For me, it seems like that's a good backdrop to then bring literal life to the street. I have questions about the efficacy of the tree planting on Irving, because you only provided 3 feet of planting space. But what if that goes away? You can expand that ground floor plan to some of the comments you guys have made, and then use this massing system as a backdrop for literal plants. Because I think right now, if it's just a massing, I see the hesitation for life on the street, but I also can see this being a phenomenal green wall that could be celebrated globally. So maybe being a little creative about what happens at that facade system. If you need the parking, and this seems to be the most logical way to address that, maybe bringing a new element, superimposing vegetation on top of that could go a long way.
Glad you mentioned it. It was one of many options that we looked at before we landed on this one. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, before Ray reads back his notes.
I can, or I've got them, Arturo's got them, in interest of time, we've got another
Yeah.
applicant.
Okay, so I would, I want to, we, on behalf of this group, we want once again to thank you for tackling the issue. No one wants an interview in downtown. So we know it's hard, we know it's challenging. So this panel of the city appreciates that you guys are doing that. But having said that, we invite you to come back. You say you have other alternatives, other options in the works. We invite you to come back and share other ideas in light of the comments that you received today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. Been a long day. Thanks.
I spit on it too, so I cleaned it up and I didn't.
It was like I was standing on this side of the glass watching.
I thought about that.
My husband.
It's down to.
Thank y'all.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, they were already good. They couldn't do it. College.
Well, one of those things I'm trying to be as quiet as possible, but. How you doing?
I'm not
Let's go.
talking, I'm not talking today.
You're not talking today? Are you going to go fast?
No, he goes.
All right, guys.
I mean, if you guys are on the deadline and just wanna, you understand.
No, we'll give you the attention that you.
I'm here waiting for the.
We'll give you the attention that you need. This is the second project that we'll be reviewing this morning, the Magnolia Hotel. And Ray, will you introduce the project?
Yeah, so Magnolia Hotel, they did come before this board in December 2023. The proposed ballroom and rooftop pool addition at that time on the east side, that's no longer being considered. Revised scope of work includes a 160 room hotel and 130 residential units. Proposed public realm enhancements will consist of streetscape improvements, updated architectural pavers, and replacement of the non-historic storefront at street level. So I'll hand it off to you.
Excellent, thank you. Who starts?
Want us to do intros or?
Yes.
Matthew Finn, developer, Sycamore Development.
Patrick Parker, Gensler, project architect.
Pete Chalfant, Gensler, hospitality practice leader.
Very good. So, I know the Sycamore has been in front of this panel. Have you guys been in front of this panel?
Yes, I was here last year at the previous project, same building, so.
Oh,
I'm very
right.
familiar.
Okay, so you know how we do. We know what we do, how we work, so we don't need to represent ourselves, right?
Yep.
So, thank you for being here. Tell us what you have. We'll give you feedback.
So I think the only 2 points I'd add to the summary is on the residential apartment side, we have an affordable component to that. So that adds to 130 apartments that we're providing. You know, we are going for historic tax credits. So that's both the Texas Historic Commission and the NPS process for us. It's also a part of the former project. You know, and other than that, I think the architects can help talk about the street improvements that we're proposing. We can obviously take any questions.
So fairly easy, we'll keep this short, and I think since the project's much more than we saw before, we're only proposing minor interventions to the historic building as it sits today. So largely what we want to focus the conversation on was the pedestrian experience. A lot of this is held over from before, so we've already talked about the streetscape improvements, so the flat work, it's being managed in architectural concrete. We're leaving a lot of this as it exists today on Akron Street, so we're keeping the loading on the Akron Street of the street. And over here on Commerce, we're introducing above that to help project pedestrians for drop off for the hotel component. And of course, as you see here, we're keeping the report for the residential access as well. We do know there's an easement for Texas Plaza, which is just north, so we're keeping that as well. So we do have to cut through that remains today underneath what was the for the building. As far as historically as the building sits today, we've shown one of these images in a few of the renderings that we may have seen before. What we're proposing again are smaller dimensions to remove the 1998 glazing that we introduced and bring it back to something that was closer in material that should be there historically. We have a few people that we're working with that I'm sure you're familiar with all this day at the end of the project that we've looked at the material. So it's going to be more of a brass bronze material. We're still doing the research so that the tone will make sure it's appropriate for this building. But again, as we presented before, the big focus would be the canopy for the hotel entry, and again, the intervention for the storefront, just a place in the what is different for this project is the motorport side. We do know that this facade is not historic, but they did add the canopy in '98, so we're proposing to buy that canopy and introduce a few other interventions just for the residential aspect of the building. And again, for the negative positive access. We're working on the component that it's going to be the same materiality as what we're using for the storefront at the Commerce Street and Akron facades. Again, we're working to that tonality now. What we don't see, but you will see in the plan and the pamphlet, there's the current water feature there. We're going to read by that. We're working through the materiality of that. The exit to enhance the pedestrian experience as well. It may not be a water feature. It may be more vegetative growth. That will report quite a bit. That's what we're currently working.
Or planning, excuse me, sure. You said something about the canopy here. What can you what? Sorry. So that's the existing canopy, and then there will be a new canopy, is that correct? Is that what it says?
So it's the same canopy.
It's the same.
Replanting.
Replanting, okay. Thank you.
So form will remain the same.
Okay, all right, thanks. Okay, please keep.
Sure. No, the things that we're suggesting to change in this building are just very minor, and it's all the stuff that was done as not historic, so the 1998 construction, you'll remember.
Okay.
The other things that we're proposing, you don't necessarily see, but it's improvements on the interior, but again, that doesn't really relate to the pedestrian experience, but of course, it's the hotel lobby. We know there's gonna be an added component, but that's gonna be part of the project as it develops, so there will potentially be a restaurant here, but maybe a lounge here with the residential component, but that's something we're currently working through. The idea is just to activate again the Ackerd Street and Commerce Street presence, and kind of get that better enhanced experience on the street. We do know, and I think it was asked before, about the historic components for the interior of the building. Of course, the elevator lobby, the first one, I think you have that. We're gonna preserve that, so the storage things like that, I'm just gonna prepare it as needed. And then we know on 24, there's the historic office and today, so we're gonna go back up there. We've been working with Dr. Gunn, the THP, and all this related to that. What you're not seeing here, I can bring it up briefly to point. It's the balustrade on the roof. I think it's this last one, right? That one. So this is the only other thing we're changing. The building exterior, of course, is protected, but there's a city ordinance that requires us to remove the metal railing that exists today, and we'll come back with the balustrade that's appropriate. So again, interventions are minimal. At best, it's the storefront, the canopies, the reclining steps, definitely that and less repair restoration. With that, like I mentioned, not much else we're doing to touch the building, but we can go into the questions.
You have several on the board here. Anything that,
Nothing that, we wanted to focus the conversation on pedestrian experience, but I can walk through the rest of the board if you'd like.
would you mind, spreading the boards on the back? So we see, I know that most of it is probably given the fact that.
Very good.
And that's not the rest of it.
Great, thank you. Oh. Oh, anything else that you'd like to share?
I think the only other thing that we haven't talked about, and I'll set this in front for a brief moment. Materiality, again, it's in front of what we see today. Historically, we know just working with those entities, we don't like to see lots of plantings block the building, but we are suggesting bringing planters back in the street. We do know that there are some existing trees here today, so we're evaluating what these are and if these can be maintained in place, but we would replace in kind. And then the materials, the grant that we've talked about, we're introducing bollards to protect the pedestrians as well as the bump out that we've seen before, and the materiality that we're working through for the storefront mechanic that we're working through. Of course, as needed, repairing and matching any kind of latest on the existing facade. Outside of that, just to talk to these other boards, we do have the street sections that are changing a little bit, and that's primarily at the bump out that's going to match across the street at Adolphus. And it would be similar to what we have across the street at Jewel, so that would help protect the drop-off zone for hotel guests. So this kind of shows what the drop-off is, and the other section that's just in front of the main door where the new canopy will be just close, so it's a zero curve, but we are introducing bollards to help protect the pedestrians here. Aside of that, I think I've pretty much talked through most of the things. We did bring an example, just to show what's proposed for the typical hotel level and typical resi level. We're working through this down, but kind of gives you an idea.
Excellent. Thank you. Typically, we will do questions and then we provide feedback, but since Mark and Maria have to be very, very soon, we will collapse the questions and comments. Okay. So Maria, Mark, please.
I seem to remember that, you have patio space in the corner of that, is that gone?
Previously, and we had suggested a temporary outdoor dining experience for the other project, but that's been removed. So we're keeping the width for the pedestrians to get through after, but there will be no dining patio.
And so from a landscaping standpoint, I see the 2 trees there and then a couple of planters, right? And looks
Right.
like it before, is that it?
Right, so it's the existing trees that we have today. We do know with the existing loading zone, the width that we have here is pretty tight for pedestrians, especially considering we have the DART bus line here, there's the train station, or the DART line up north. So we know this could be fairly congested, especially with the Discovery District here. So this is very tight on acre as far as what we can do. We are suggesting planters up front, as we can see in the renderings. But again, these are minimal because we're working with historic entities that have an influence in those. What we don't show too heavily in the renderings is we do have some magnolia trees here. Again, we're going to study those to make sure that they're healthy, but we'd like to keep this as well as the water feature that we have today, introducing vegetation there.
Is there an opportunity for green space on the bottom left corner? Well, yeah, and maybe what were the parallel spaces are closer to the parallel spaces?
With the previous iteration, we tried the point of contention, there's a parade route through here, so we're restricted as far as how close to the curb that we can get. I think even this traffic signal has to articulate to move out of the way because the parade stands it is right here.
Yeah, you got us there, a parade route.
This is what we
Thanksgiving
have.
Day parade. The Thanksgiving Day parade we do every year.
Yeah, there's an easement of some kind for that?
So when we worked through this with the city last time, we were moving the traffic signal right that's here right now. It's moving to the corner, and we were told we has to articulate so it can move out of the way. And then we were told we can't have any tall plantings here.
What about low planting? It seems like.
So low planting, yes, we are suggesting planters, and we're working through that with the landscape.
But you're thinking more green planting like that.
No trees. Oh, you don't need trees there, you got beautiful architecture. Yeah.
My general comment is that it looks very bare, and I know there's some restrictions. I'm not saying you need to have trees, but it seems like it looks extremely bare and it's lacking some soft scape.
Yeah, totally understood, and we'll work through that with the landscape. Again, there's a bunch of architects trying to create some renderings to make it a beautiful buildings, that's just what we look at, but we'll certainly study that further to make sure that we have flush with experience.
Great, would you please investigate the trees Thanksgiving parade issue? I will. I think that Maria would like to see landscaping considered here, and I suspect everybody else would agree with me. So, but yes. Maria, anything else? Mark?
As a landscape architect, I don't know if I agree with her, but that's okay.
Oh,
Strike my comment.
It's a very downtown urban environment. We have a lot of people that congregate in AT&T Plaza, so you're gonna have a lot of people that are going through that area. So my only concern is that people run over it over time, and does it just become a nuance that's hard for people to maintain? That's all. I kind of. I too am very glad to see that the expanded restaurant seating is not happening out at Packard. I think we all commented on that last time. I love the idea that you're pinching down commerce at the intersection to make it a little bit safer for the hotel drop off right there. The only comment that I would have to this that I think is maybe missing is street furniture. You know, benches, trash receptacles, things like that, where you have such a great plaza that's over here, but I don't want to engage in that. Is there a place or two that I can sit here and watch what's going on in the public realm to feel more engaged, but yet I don't have to go all the way over there? So I just ask that you study that, especially along Commerce Street, to add a little bit more of a pedestrian realm activity feel.
Yeah, that's not it, especially with.
Parade seating.
Bleachers. Yeah. Just leave them there. Park float there.
Anything else, Mark?
No, that was really it. I mean, I think it's a great project. I love that you guys are keeping the facade and it looks like you're trying to bring it back. Some of its historical context, and I think as we all know, in downtown, this is probably the gem of, and I'm looking at Norm, the gem of really great historic architecture within Dallas.
We have a collection, if you're right, that's in the top tier for sure.
Definitely, I lived at DPNL for a long time, so I walked in and around this building. I really appreciate it.
Excellent. All right, so This time we'll start on that end. Yes, Maria and Mark, they have to leave earlier, but it was important.
We
Sorry.
Trying to get out of here.
Maria.
Well,
So Sarah, yes, please.
normally be surprised to hear that I also agree with Mark. I'm a landscape architect, and I think that this is a case where we don't need to litter it with street trees. It serves a function as a downtown pedestrian experience. That being said, I would really still fight for those planters at the facade as appropriate, because I do think snow softening is gonna be important. And those trees that are on Eckerd, I would advocate that they don't look like they're in particularly great health. Maybe there's a way to, since you're kind of not investing in a lot of green space here, is there a way to sneak in like 3 street trees and really treat them well, give them the Silva experience, so they've got really a lot of more root space and a lot better chance of thriving. Yeah, those 2 right there. They're okay.
They're sad.
Yeah, they're a little sad, and there's not a lot of great light, so you'll need to study what species that is. But overall, I'm very excited for this project, and I think that the removal of that patio actually makes it a lot more successful, and don't have a lot to add.
Great, thank you. Good.
Same, I don't really have any comments, I think your renderings are really handsome and, that just, illustrates a good design direction, so I am happy to see those green awnings being taken off. It just, it just makes the building feel more stately like it should, so, it's not all gunked up. So, I'm excited about this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. So, any comments from anybody?
Now, I just want to confirm, so there is no change in the existing curve layout except that one part that closes the fourth lane on Commerce.
Yes, so this is the proposed addition to the curve. So again, it'd be the same plane really, or in plane with the Adolphus and then with the jewel across the way, but just primarily to protect the slow down traffic.
So, no, I don't have any, I guess so only if, I'm sure your traffic engineer will tell you, if, because you move the curve further closer, so you need to have a smaller push button, they can always do the small ones, which won't interfere with the breaker out. And it's a pretty simple fix, so, no, great.
You're in more fun. Great.
Yeah. No, because once you move the curve out, the DDLR requirement, that's all must be within X feet of that, so it's nothing you can fix.
Yeah, we're starting to run those tracks, plus with moving drainage and everything like that, there's a big things.
Over by the truck. Any question? For me? Okay. The question, where are you in the tax credit process and the local process? Have you made a formal certificate of appropriateness application or courtesy review?
So I'll speak to the certificate of appropriateness for the tax credit. We took the previous application and we modified it, because we took off the addition.
So you're keeping,
with modifications.
Okay, so that's, you use the same C of A.
That's correct.
And tax credits, you're not in the block part B yet, but you're in discussion.
So,
Catherine, is someone?
yeah, we're gonna amend that process. They're gonna have a set of drawings together in the next
4 weeks-ish.
4 to 6 weeks, and that will be what we submit for the part 2 process.
Do they know what's coming? Have you had preliminary discussion?
Yes.
And we're being awarded low income housing tax credits next week. Big affordability.
And the balustrade, is that if you say it's compatible, is it compatible or is it replicating something that used to be there and it's missing?
It's replicating something that used to be there and that was removed in the 50s. If you look at the building currently, there's a metal railing there, and part of there's no ordinance, it's a lot of still sitting, and we don't need work on anything to that. So it's replacing it on the 26th floor and approved.
As long as it's an accurate replication, that's good. I trust our city program to monitor this. My comments are brief. I like this much better than the last thing that came through. I have no objections. The approach to the historic building and all is great. It's appropriate. This is, however, still a banner day, and that me and the landscape architects are on the same page. My position is a city is the architectural equivalent to their forest. And so, you know, whereas not every place needs a building in a forest, not all cities need plants in front of some of the better architecture. And so I'm amazed, but pleased, and I needed that kind of.
Well, finally got along.
I needed that affirmation after the first project this morning, I promise you. So I'm good. I think this is great. More power to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Enrico, before you put your fine point on it, I actually started looking at my aerial map and now I'm confused about the curb strategy. So you're saying you're bumping out the curb compared to where it previously exists at the Ackerd and Commerce intersection, or it's actually taking away from some of the existing sidewalk to get that pole?
So sidewalk remains as it is today. Currently, if you look at that map that you may have in front of you, the Adolphus bumps out. Right now, the curb does this. So we're pushing it out to this lane and we're taking the traffic lane and we're coming back in, and then we have drop off.
Okay, so you're saying that the public sidewalk doesn't reduce in width?
It doesn't.
Maybe what I'm confused about is it looks like the Adolphus, like the current existing curb is matching on both sides of the street.
I don't know when this was changed, but I know this was modified. And I don't know the date of which we have.
Okay, I don't know.
In our discussions with Kimberly Moore, civil engineer that we worked with previously on the project, we would be modifying, bringing it up, but we are not reducing the
Okay, that's what I wanted to be sure about.
Excellent. Look, I don't have anything to add. You got the excellent feedback on the panel. And we want you to finish strong, to hurry up.
Hurry up.
What is the timeframe?
That's a good question.
As soon as we can, we want to hurry up as quickly as we
We're
possibly.
submitting for permits, what, in
August.
Thank you for taking good care of the Magnolia.
Yes.
It's another jewel. Yeah, easily complete. Yeah.
One great building.
Anything else from the panel? Gray? Anybody? No? Arturo? Yes? Evan? No? Hello? All right. So I understand that Gray will compile the comments and share with the group, with the presenters and with the panel. Is that correct? All right. So with that, our meeting today is adjourned. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.